Okay, so yeah, today's date being December 16th, all right? And we're correct? Yeah, we're good. Awesome. So we're learning about the Cartesian plane. So this unit, if you see here, it's called linear relations, all right? And we're going to get into dealing with a bunch of different things. But here's some key definitions that you're definitely going to need to look at over the next little while, and they're pretty important. So the Cartesian plane that you will see right here is the x and y axis is used to plot a point identified by a set of ordered pairs, okay? If you're not sure what ordered pairs is right now, we will be going over all this stuff, so don't really worry too much. So again, the Cartesian plane, if you remember this from last year, is just that chart that kind of looks like this, and then we fill in points based on that. Okay, and as you notice, I should be using a ruler for this stuff, and you will be asked to do so on all assignments, all quizzes, and all tests. So we know basically that this one being horizontal is our x-axis. This one vertical is our y. And if you didn't know that, now you do. So basically the points on this Cartesian plane are called ordered pairs. So a pair of numbers based on the x and y, or based on the axis, x or y axis, indicate the x and y coordinates of a point on the graph. Okay, so that's what we're dealing with here. So the x-axis, as I just outlined, is that horizontal axis, and the y is that vertical axis, okay? So that axis, those basically help us when we're plotting points. Now, the middle of the chart, or where, if you imagine this as a letter T or a crossing, right where they intersect or cross, this point right here is what we call the origin. And that's where both the x and y axis cross, and the ordered pair number would be 0, 0, because it's 0 on the x and it's 0 on the y axis, okay? And that would be that there. All right, does anyone have any questions about that, or we're pretty good so far? Wicked. Okay, so an ordered pair talks about the first number of the ordered pair is the one that corresponds to the x-axis, and the second number of an ordered pair is the one that corresponds to the y-axis. So if we look at the examples below, point A has the coordinate or x-coordinate of 8 and a y-coordinate of -3. So the ordered pair itself is just 8, -3. What I tend to usually do, guys, is if as soon as I get an ordered pair on my sheet, I would just write an X and a Y. So I always remember which I'm following, okay? And if we go to graph or put a point on this ordered pair, we can figure it out based on what we have. So if I know my first number is the x-axis, I would go along this x line, and it would actually come out, so this being 6, 7, and 8, would actually come out here. So that would be x, or 8 on the x-axis. And -3 would be 3 down on the y-axis, 1, 2, 3. And wherever those two things intersect is where that ordered pair would be. So that's kind of a poor example there, but say we did a different one, 1 and 4, okay? We know that this first number is what, our x or y axis? Georgia? X, and then our second one would then be what? Y, perfect. So if we look at this one here, we would go to our x-axis and see 1, and then we would find 4 on our y-axis, and where those intersect is where we would put that point, and that point right there would be 1 and 4, okay? Now, some things to remember that are also on this Cartesian plane are the first quadrant, the second quadrant, third quadrant, and fourth quadrant. So you will recognize that in the first quadrant, we have positive numbers and positive numbers. So we've got two positive numbers, okay? So the x-axis is all positive, the y-axis is all positive. On the second quadrant, we have positive numbers on the y-axis, but we have negative numbers on the x. And then on the third, we have both negative on the x and negative on the y. And then finally, on the fourth, we have a positive on the x and negative on the y. So it's important to know those things because you might be asked the question, on the second quadrant, is the x-axis positive or negative? And you'll need to know those things, okay? So that's kind of what we're looking at there. Any questions about that one, guys? No? Sweet. So we're going to do a couple examples on the next page here. So it asks us, what are the coordinates of the following ordered pairs? So we're going to refer down to this chart right here, and that should be filled out. Okay. So the first one asks us, what are the coordinates of Q? And if we look at this, we have to find the X and then Y coordinates of each one. So if we look at Q to begin with, Q right here, we know on the x-axis, if we scroll across, we see it's at 8. And if we look at the y-axis, we would scroll up and see that it's at 4. So the ordered pair would then be 8 and 4, both positive numbers, okay? If we look at R, which is over here, we first need to look at our x-axis. And if we scroll across our x-axis, we see it's at -6. And if we look at our y-axis, we see that it's at -2. So we would write -6 and -2. Okay. Does someone want to help me with 5? Or with S? I apologize. Yeah, Georgia, go ahead. So it would be 5 because that's where you found it on the x-axis, and -10 is where you found it on the y-axis. So that is correct. So 5 and -10. How about T? Someone else want to help us out? Brady, can you give me a hand there? For T, -2 and 3, perfect. So -2 on that x-axis and 3 on the y. So -2 and 3. How about you? Yeah, Jay, go for it. So again, if she looks at you, it's 3 and 0. That was a tough one, and you nailed it. 3 and 0. Okay, and the last one here is V. Same thing on the x-axis, it's 0, but on the y-axis, it's -6. So it would be 0, -6. Okay. All right. Now it says, what point is named by each of the following ordered pairs? So if we look at this again, we can just go through it. But 5 and 2, if we go 5 on the x and 2 up on the y, we would have D. If we did 6 on the x and -4 on the y, we would have G. If we did -3 on our x-axis and 7 on our y, we would get F. Can someone help me with 8 and negative 5? Yeah, Jay, go for it. E. How about negative 10 and 0? Yeah, go for it again. H. Wicked. And then our last one there, 0 and 5. I'll give it to you. 0 on the X, 5 on the Y would be I. All right. And then this question here, for what quadrant is each of the following ordered pairs located? So in this case, remember this being the first quadrant, this being the second, this being the third, and this being the fourth. We can look at the following. So F, we see over here, is in the second quadrant. D would be in that first quadrant. G would then be in the fourth. And R is down here, and that would be in the third. Okay. So for question number 5, I'm only going to do the first two for you because I think you guys are starting to get the point of this. But and then I'll let you do the assigned work and take your time doing that. Okay. So it says plot the following coordinates or ordered pairs on the graph. So if we do the first one, 5 and 8. So I would go 5 across on the x-axis and up 8 because that's positive. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'd put my dot. And then I make sure that I mark my dot by just writing A. Okay. For B, if I did B, remember once again, I follow on the x-axis the first number, so negative 3, which would be moving to the left, and that's there. And then negative 9 means I go down. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And my point would be right there. And that would be B. I'll do C for you guys, and then I'll let you do the rest because I think you guys kind of got the hang of it. So again, C being 6 and negative 4, we start out on that x-axis and we go to 6. And negative 4, we know we move down. So we will go to this spot here, and that would be C. Okay, so that basically there, guys, is the ins and outs of the Cartesian plane. It's important to know that our x-axis is the horizontal one, our y being the vertical. And then in our ordered pairs, it always goes x comma y. So we follow that x-axis first, and then we follow the y. And where those 2 points intersect is where we're going to put that point. Okay, so I'll leave you guys to the assigned work for the next little bit, and then we'll carry on once I think you guys have kind of got a grasp of it.